I used to think that confidence meant having all the answers, and I don't so much think that anymore. I think confidence might actually be believing yourself enough to live with the answers you choose, which is awkward because I'm a therapist, and people usually assume that therapists have the answers or at least know where we can find the answers, like where they're kept. Like maybe there's this secret therapist handbook that says something like Chapter 1, what to do with your life. Chapter 2, whether or not you should break up with him. Chapter 3, how to stop caring so much what your mother thinks. And then there's this appendix titled How to Respond in the Most Appropriate Way When They Text Back K. Unfortunately, there is no such handbook. I checked, trust me. I'm sure I Googled it. I Google everything because for things like this, TikTok refuses to acknowledge my request to change the creator page to allow for standard times instead of military times. So I Google every single day, what's military time for 5 p.m.? It's 1700 hours, obviously. Anyway, Elizabeth, pull yourself together. The truth is, I entered graduate school believing that becoming a counselor meant I was going to become an exceptionally skilled advice giver. I thought I would learn how to listen to someone's problem, help them analyze it, and then gently guide them toward the right decision. That is not what therapy is, or at least I don't think that's what therapy should be, because I'm not the authority on anyone else's life except my own. I am a consultant. Your friends are consultants, your parents, consultants, your partner, hopefully, an amazing consultants. Doctors are consultants. Experts can be very informed, very educated, very valuable consultants, but they are still just consultants. And the person who actually has to live with your life is you. So the question I've been thinking a lot lately is how do I stop asking other people what they think? There is nothing wrong with asking people what they think, just for the record. The question needs to become how do I remember to consult myself also? Welcome to Friends with Therapy Benefits, a solo episode. There are no guests, no one else for me to interview, no one else's story to draw out, no conversation for me to manage or hide behind. Just me practicing using my voice, which honestly is way more terrifying. I have known since January that I wanted to do this episode in August, just me up close and personal. And naturally, I began to prepare and record this approximately 2 weeks before the raw recording is due to my editor. So, growth. I did know for certain that I did not want a guest for this one. I do know, Avi, that podcasts typically run with a guest and it's built around a conversation. There's a host, there's someone you invite, the host asks thoughtful questions, the guest reveals something meaningful. And I do love doing that. I think I'm really good at being a conversational manager and I know how to focus outward. I know how to notice when someone is becoming emotional, when they need me to say more, when they need another question, when they need the conversation to find a soft landing place. I know how to make space for other people. That has been one of my most practiced skills during my life. Hello, I made it an entire career, but for this episode, I did not want anyone else to focus on. I did not want another person's opinion to listen to be honest. I did not want someone else's energy that I felt I needed to organize myself around. I wanted to see what would happen if I let myself be the focus. And even saying that out loud makes my anxious energy want to clarify that this is not because I think that I'm the most fascinating person alive. It's not because I think everyone desperately is waiting for 45 minutes of uninterrupted Elizabeth, but it's because I have spent so much of my life believing that focusing on myself is selfish, uncomfortable, and unnecessary. And I am doing my damnedest right now to unlearn that. I am trying to learn that I can take up space in my own life without first having to prove that it benefits someone else. It is important for me to share what it feels like carrying this episode alone. I joke a lot with my mom, who is a boomer, who's also an oldest daughter of an oldest daughter, that I'm so grateful for the women in my family's sacrifice to work and be successful so that I, a millennial oldest daughter, can sit on my own podcast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday and talk about my feelings. I think it's important that I share what it feels like to do this for someone like me. And I am drawn to the fact that I stumble and fumble my words often. I go off on tangents that often make no sense to anyone but me. And sometimes I lose my place in conversation and I get super anxious about it. I have this shame spiral, self-judgment, cliff free falling into this is why we don't do this. This is why we focus on other people. This is why we keep ourselves quiet. And the story that I tell myself about this messiness, at least until I stepped more into the content creation world, which is allowing me to use more of my voice uninterrupted, is that I'm not allowed to be messy. That this is something, a part of me that I need to hide, that I need to have a polished package and a smile before I enter the world so that everyone knows that I am credible, that I'm knowledgeable, that I'm pleasant and nice. And there's this incredible conflict internally between real emotional work that I have been pouring myself into the last couple of years. I know that's a doing, but I've also been feeling a lot of that, and counterside this thought that I need to continue to appear credible, knowledgeable, and professional, ding, in public spaces. I'm afraid that people will question. Why would I listen to her? Why would I work with her? She's a therapist. Have you seen what she's been putting out on her social media? But here's what I tell other people, and I truly do feel this deep in my soul. Expertise does not require emotional perfection. In fact, I myself appreciate other people's messiness. It's permission I also need often to loosen my own girdle a little bit. Being human does not cancel out professional competence. And I realized that when I teased out my definition of messiness, I've used that word a million times already in this podcast, and I'm sure I'll spiral about that later. You use messiness too many times. People are like, what I was really decoding there was humanness. My work is informed by my education, by my experience, by my training, and by my own lived experience. The messier I've become, the better therapist I've become. So here is one giant, huge step forward into messiness. There is a professional curtain that the mental health field kind of hides behind. And behind it, therapists are supposed to be regulated and healed and wise and appropriately hydrated at all times, and also apparently unaffected by anyone sending a text that ends in a period with zero emojis. We're supposed to understand attachment styles without being triggered by our own. We're supposed to teach boundaries without ever having agreed to something and then immediately regretting it. We are supposed to tell people that mistakes are totally human while privately believing that our own mistakes are evidence that we're frauds. I don't want to be behind this curtain anymore. I actually don't think I ever wanted to be behind it. It was a lot of the root causes of the anxiety that I feel every day. I deeply believe in ethics. I believe in boundaries. I believe that clients should not have to emotionally caretake their therapist, but I do not believe in pretending to be the gold standard of mental wellness and that actually helps people. I'm not sharing on my social platforms because I have completed this level of work. I am sharing because I am in it. And maybe the most honest version of this podcast is not me showing up as the therapist with the answer. Maybe it's me showing up as a person who has learned how to ask better questions. This episode is brought to you by Luna Rose Candle Company. And honestly, if you've been around here for a while, you already know how much I love her candles. They're one of those little rituals that tells my nervous system, all right, we're home now. Their seasonal collections always sell out ridiculously fast. I swear, if you see one that you love, you're going to want to put it down and order it right away because it will not be there for long. They also have beautiful gift bundles. Their sacred ritual set is super cute and makes an amazing gift. And yes, buying yourself a gift absolutely counts. If you're looking to slow down, create a little cozy corner, or just make your house smell incredible, check out Luna Rose Candle Company and use Elizabeth at checkout for free shipping. Before we go any further, we do briefly have to visit Oldest Daughter headquarters because having the answer is part of the fabric of Oldest Daughter energy. So let's talk about ODTR energy for a minute. Oldest daughters are notoriously known for their hyper independence, their reliability, their tenacity, their leadership abilities, often coded as bossiness, and less so about the loneliness and emotional burnout that all of this causes. We are the family caretakers, managers, planners. We do everything for everyone else, yet rarely are the one that anyone else checks in on. And no shade to our families. We have created and perpetuated this narrative. We don't offer softness. We don't offer vulnerability, which I have learned is necessary for the types of connections and relationships that we desperately want, but often have a lot of difficulty finding, accepting, and keeping. And I also want to add that not all havers of oldest daughter energy are chronologically the eldest daughter in the bunch. So if you feel responsible for everyone else's feelings, if you struggle to ask or accept help, if you automatically take charge when things feel super uncertain, you feel guilty resting, end of sentence, but specifically when someone else needs something, if you anticipate everyone else's needs before considering your own, or you believe being needed is how you earn love, or if you quietly resent everyone while insisting, no, it's fine, I'll really do it on my own. Congratulations or condolences. You probably have at least oldest daughter energy. And I know that not every oldest daughter has the same experience. Family systems are incredibly complicated, and birth order is not destiny. Some of us heard you're so mature for your age at 6 years old and thought that it was a compliment and a badge to wear. Meanwhile, emotionally, we had already been promoted to assistant manager of the household. And listen, there are gifts in that. It makes us strong, independent, successful, reliable, capable, doers, movers, shakers. And honestly, most of my close friends have oldest daughter energy, whether they are chronologically the oldest daughter or not. I feel held by them. I feel seen by them. I know they can handle things and they know that I can handle things, but there is this other side of being the one who always handles things. Sometimes you feel deeply lonely. Sometimes you are surrounded by people that love you, but no one that fully knows you because your entire identity has been built around being the one that's okay. Sometimes you become so good at anticipating everyone else's needs that you cannot access what you need until you are exhausted, angry, disconnected, or physically unwell. I ate that you're mature for your age BS up like it was my last meal. It was the fuel that kept my hyper independence running. It is a well-known joke, or was, I guess, a well-known joke amongst my high school friends that I was the mom in the group. But you know what? No one checks in on mom. Unnoticed emotional laborer, family manager, caretaker of all of the things. And this was all 16 at 16 for me. And many oldest daughters can relate to that. As the kids say these days, that is not a flex. I remember one of the first jobs that I had as a teenager. I was waiting tables at Ruby Tuesdays. Is that still a place? Um, one of the servers, I forget his name, used to poke fun at my hyper independence constantly by purposefully closing that swinging door between the kitchen and the dining area, because I didn't need help at all. So for him, that included holding the door open for me as I'm like trying to balance drinks and food and the little mini burgers that they served. Um, Super mean of this guy, maybe, but also this is what I mean. When I continuously present as someone who has it all handled, who admittedly bats other people's hands away in like disgust when they attempt to even suggest helping me, how long will people continue to try and show up in that way? And like, in some ways, this little joke, I mean, clearly I still remember it. This was like 20 years ago, lands, it hits somewhere. For me, it has been a learned skill to request help, to show my weakness, to work against the storyline in my brain that tells me that these things make me less than. There is a comfort in relationships where everyone is capable, but I want to plant this little seed for the other oldest daughter energy havers out there. When no one is acknowledging their need for help or their desire to be seen or supported, you're missing some of the places in a solid relationship foundation. A lot of, most, all of my relationships, friendships are with other oldest daughters, only daughters, oldest daughter energy havers. And I will be honest, it is super comfy. I feel like of my little group, we are also learning vulnerability and allowing other people to see that messiness. And remember, we're working to replace that word with humanness. Henceforth, messiness will be stricken from the record and replaced with humanness. We're working on it. We're working on it. We're slowly letting in breath. We're encouraging each other to show up as human, not or to not show up at all because you're mentally exhausted and you got other things to do and take care of you. You know, you need to take care of yourself. My little girl group has this joke, this phrase that we've been using a lot lately. I can totally do that because I am flexible and carefree. I can totally go to a new yoga studio with a new teacher that I have never met or seen before and be in a place in the room that I would not choose because the room is super full because I am very flexible and carefree. I can incorporate a last minute schedule change that was unnecessary because I am totally flexible and carefree. I think that poking fun, making light of that part of oldest daughter energy that has to have it pulled all together has been a huge part of the undoing of that level of anxiety that's all wrapped up there, at least for me. And sometimes becoming a resource for yourself starts in a moment where you do not feel strong, certain, or especially confident. Sometimes it starts with a quiet little voice saying, something about this doesn't feel right. It's not a dramatic revelation. It's not even a fully formed argument. It's just like discomfort, hesitation, a feeling that you can't quite explain. And if you have spent your life being praised for being capable, agreeable, and easy to manage, it can be very hard to treat that feeling like useful information because the blueprint says trust the person that knows more. Don't make things harder. Don't ask too many questions. Do not be so difficult. And in 2020, the blueprint collided directly with my body. There is this phrase that people love to use, trust your gut. And honestly, I've always found that phrase a little annoying because it makes intuition sound like it's clear. Like your gut calmly, confidently raises its hand and says, excuse me, Elizabeth, I have reviewed all the evidence and I believe that we should just proceed in this different direction. And that is not how mine works. Mine whispers very quietly. Usually, while my anxiety is standing 2 feet away with a megaphone and a PowerPoint presentation and 17 catastrophic capabilities. So I've never been someone who walks around saying, I just had this feeling. I'm much more of I have several competing feelings, multiple browser tabs open, and one of these thoughts may have an ounce of useful information within it. In October of 2020, those feelings changed my life. Not because I suddenly became super confident, not because I believed I knew more than my doctor, but because for once I decided that my own discomfort deserved equal consideration. So let me set this scene. It's October of 2020. COVID is in full swing. Pretty much everyone else at this time, I was trying to find little ways to stay connected with my people. And my team at work got together this idea to put boo baskets on each other's porches. We couldn't physically be together for Halloween, so we made these cute little treat bags that we placed on everyone's porches. Just a small way of saying, like, hey, I'm thinking about you. I remember driving between houses when my phone rang and it's my OBGYN's office. If you have health anxiety, you already know what's happening next. My stomach drops into my butt before I even answer. Doctors don't usually call to tell you everything looks great. They're not calling to congratulate you on having the most beautiful cervix ever. They're calling because something needs your attention. I answered, and the nurse is incredibly kind and calm and matter of fact. And she says, my pap test came back abnormal. She reassured me that this doesn't automatically mean cancer. Sometimes abnormal results happen and they mean nothing. We just need to do more testing. Then she says this phrase that anxious people like me absolutely love: try not to worry. Respectfully, has try not to worry ever worked for anyone? If it did, I would be out of business. Therapists wouldn't need. Anyway, I hung up the phone, and looking back now, I think that was one of those moments where my life quietly divided itself into the before and the after. Not because I knew what was coming, I had absolutely no idea, but because something inside of me shifted. Because here's what I haven't told you yet: I almost never even had that appointment. A few months earlier, when I called to schedule my annual PAP, my doctor told me something that, to be fair, was most likely consistent with the screening guidelines at the time. Because I was married, because it was COVID, because things were delayed, because I'd always had normal PAPs, because I wasn't considered high risk, I only needed one every 5 years. 5 years. Now, here's where my health anxiety and my intuition got into this mega fist fight. My anxiety was like, fan fucking tastic. We don't have to go to the doctor. Let's never speak of this again. Under all of that, there was this tiny, itty bitty little voice, not dramatic, not loud, that was just like, really? 5 years? That doesn't feel right. I couldn't explain it. I didn't have evidence. I wasn't symptomatic. I didn't know anything about cervical cancer. I just knew that every year before I'd gone for a pack and I walked out relieved. And so, for whatever reason, waiting 5 years didn't sit right in my body. So I made the appointment anyway. And that appointment changed everything. The abnormal pap was only just the beginning. The next step was something called a colposcopy. Now, before 2020, if you had asked me what a colposcopy was, I would have confidently said, I think it's colonoscopy. You're mispronouncing it. That was part of what made it so scary. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the procedures. I didn't know the questions I was supposed to ask. I just knew that everyone else in the room around me seemed to understand what was happening except me. And when you don't know what you don't know, at least for me, it's very easy to just nod because surely the doctor knows best, right? Eventually, the additional testing came back, and I learned that I had cervical intraepithelial neoplasia grade 2, or SIN 2. I'm never repeating all of those words again all at once. If you're sitting there thinking, Elizabeth, I have absolutely no idea what any of that means, welcome to October 2020 me, because neither did I. Medical people love an acronym. I mean, so do we in behavioral health. SIN 2. Simple, right? Except nobody hands you the decoder ring. The way I eventually came to understand what this is, my body wasn't cancerous, but it was preparing for it. The troops had assembled, the supplies had been gathered, the plans had been made. War had not officially been declared yet, but everyone knew where this was heading if someone didn't step in. And I remember sitting in those appointments thinking, okay, that's a lot of words. Now, what does any of this actually mean for my life? How serious is this? How quickly do I have to move? Are there other options? Is this common? Should I be terrified? What happens next? And here's the thing. I didn't ask any of those questions, not because I didn't care, not because I wasn't curious, because I didn't even know those were the questions. I think when we're scared, we give ourselves way too much credit for how much information we're actually taking in. People think that medical appointments go like this. Doctor explains, patient understands, patient asks thoughtful follow up questions while writing on a notebook. Everybody leaves on the same page, but that wasn't my experience. My experience was more like doctor spoke, I nodded, my brain quietly left the chat. And somewhere in between cervical cancer and discussing procedures, I was completely overwhelmed. Looking back now, I wonder how many women leave doctor's appointments every single day carrying that same feeling. Not unintelligent, not uninformed, just very overwhelmed. Trying to remember that one medical term that they just heard, trying to decide, should I Google this, even though they know deep down that they shouldn't? Trying to remember what the doctor said after all of that, trying to think of a single question even when they don't know where to begin. And that's one of the biggest things this experience taught me. Sometimes the most vulnerable position in the room isn't being sick, it's being the person who doesn't speak the language. One of the things that I wish we talked about more in healthcare is how vulnerable it feels to not understand. Not because doctors are doing anything wrong. It's because when you're scared, your brain doesn't exactly become this sponge that's excited to soak up new information. It goes into survival mode. I wasn't processing anything. I was just surviving and nodding. The next thing was this thing called a colposcopy. Again, a word I had never heard before. And if you've never had one, it's a procedure where the doctor takes a closer look at your cervix and, if needed, removes small tissue samples, biopsies, to send to a lab. Before my appointment, I was told to take a couple of Tylenol, and that was pretty much the extent of preparation. I want to be really careful here because everyone's experience of their health and their body is different. My experience was very different. It was, for me, one of the most intense physical pains I've ever experienced to this point in my life. I remember thinking afterward, why didn't anyone tell me this was a possibility? Not because I wanted to be more scared than I already was, not because I would have skipped the procedure. I totally wanted to do it. I wish someone would have prepared me. I wish someone would have said, some women experience this extremely painfully. Others don't. Here's what you might expect. Here are your options if pains becomes a concern. What questions do you have? Sometimes women have these questions. That conversation never happened. And afterward, I couldn't stop thinking about something that felt so backwards to me. Years earlier, I had had a mole removed from my shoulder, and the dermatologist numbed the area with local anesthetic first. No question, no discussion about it. It was just standard. But when tissue was being hole punched from inside of my body, I was expected to take a Tylenol and power through it. That didn't make sense to me then, and it doesn't make sense to me now. This isn't me saying that every woman should have the exact same experience or the exact same treatment plan. Pain is incredibly personal. Bodies are very different. Procedures are all different. What I'm advocating for here isn't fear, it's preparation. It's something called informed consent. It's acknowledgement that there is a range of experience, and women deserve to know that range before they find themselves in the middle of it. Because if someone had simply said to me, hey, this might be really painful for you, and if it is, you're not weak, you're not dramatic, let's just talk about how we can support you, I think I would have felt a lot less alone. A quick thank you to everyone who's been reading along over my Substack. A lot of stories that you hear on this podcast actually started there as writings. They're usually a little messier and a little bit more reflective. And honestly, this is where I process things before I ever get to the microphone. This episode, especially, came from a writing through my cervical cancer journey and realizing that it was never really about my cervix. It was about learning to trust my own voice. If these conversations resonate with you and you're looking for a little bit more in between episodes, I'd love to have you over there to check it out. You can find me at elizabethmaycarr.substack.com. Okay, so here's what's interesting looking back on all of this now, that the part that stays with me isn't actually all of the procedures that I had surrounding this diagnosis. It's the version of me sitting in those appointments, quiet, agreeable, trying really hard to be the best patient, trying not to inconvenience anyone, trying not to ask stupid questions, trying to prove that I could handle it. Because somewhere along the way, I had confused being cooperative with disappearing myself. I realized that this experience changed something bigger in me than how I approached my annual pap smear. It changed how I thought about authority because somewhere along the way, I had picked up this belief that being a good patient meant not asking too many stupid questions. And if the doctor wasn't worried, I also shouldn't be worried. If they said, this is what we're going to do, it was my job to just nod and go, yeah, totally, sign me up. To be agreeable, to be easy, to not take up too much time, to not be that patient. I think I had also learned that advocating for myself somehow made me like difficult. Like asking another question meant I didn't trust the doctor. Like getting a second opinion meant I was challenging their expertise. Like saying, "Can you explain that again?" meant I wasn't being cooperative. And underneath all of that was this other belief that expertise meant certainty, that because someone was more educated than I was, their voice automatically mattered more than mine. Now, I want to be clear about something. This story is not about not trusting doctors. Please don't hear that. I love doctors. I want experts. I am incredibly grateful for people who dedicate their lives to medicine. My gynecologic oncologist is the reason why I am healthy today. This isn't an anti-medicine story. It's a pro-partnership story because doctors bring something incredibly valuable into the room, years of education, training, experience, evidence, but I bring something they don't. I live in this body. I know what feels normal for me. I know what doesn't feel right. I know my values. I know my fears. I know what risks I'm willing to take. Those things aren't competing truths. They're supposed to work together. I think for so much of my life, I believe that I had to choose between trusting myself and trusting the expert. And now I realize I can do both. I can deeply respect someone's expertise while remembering that I also have expertise. Not medical expertise, but life expertise. Me, I am an expert. And honestly, I'm the only one in the room with a degree in what it feels like to be me. For a super long time, I thought this story was about my cervix and like how awkward to talk about that on my podcast, but it isn't really. It's about authority because somewhere in my life, I learned that if someone had more education, more experience, more confidence, their voice automatically mattered more than mine. And I don't think I'm alone in that thought. How many of us have come across someone, a doctor, a boss, a parent, a partner, someone who sounded absolutely certain and immediately assumed we must be wrong? That's not humility. That's disappearing. Today, I ask more questions, not because I think I know everything, but because I know that I deserve to understand. I get second opinions, not because I think someone is wrong, but because my body deserves thoughtful care. I trust my instincts more, not because they are always correct, but because they are worthy of consideration. And maybe that's the biggest thing this experience has taught me, that self-trust isn't believing that you are always right. Self-trust is believing your voice deserves a seat at the table, that your discomfort is data. Your questions are welcome or should be, that your intuition gets to participate also, not to replace expertise, but to participate in it. Because I don't think that healing magically happened when I evicted my uterus in 2024. As much as I enjoy saying my uterus was making plans to kill me, so I had to evict her, the real healing started much earlier. The very moment I picked up my phone, ignored the blueprint that said, "You're fine. You can wait 5 years. Don't make a fuss." And instead listened to that tiny little whisper that simply said, "No, go." That whisper changed my life. Okay, Elizabeth, that was a very personal story about your cervical history, but like, how does this get into friends with therapy, like benefits? Like, what are we talking about? I think a lot of people enter into therapy believing that therapists are experts and will tell them what to do. And I don't blame them for that. As I said, I entered graduate school to become a counselor, believing that was what I would learn to do better. I thought I was going to become better positioned to give advice and solve problems. But the helping profession should not be about people dependent on our answers. The goal should not be for you to leave therapy thinking, Elizabeth knows exactly what I should do. The goal is for you to leave therapy more able to hear yourself. When a client asks me, and this happens often, what do you think? I often feel the question deep down in my heart before I process the words that will become my response, because underneath what do you think often lies, am I crazy? Am I being unreasonable? Can I trust my own reaction? Will you please tell me that I am allowed to do what I already know I want to do? And I understand that longing. I feel it too. In therapy, when asked by a client, what do you think? I typically will say something like, I think you're looking for reassurance here. And I can give you my opinion, but even if my opinion reassures you, it may feel a little bit like eating this sugary snack. It'll fill you up super quickly, but in an hour, you're going to crash and need something else because it's not you. I'm not you. No one else is. So let's go back. Let's figure out where you're getting stuck. Do you know what you want? Or do you know what you want, but you're afraid of someone's reaction, or you're afraid of looking like you don't know the answer? Are you worried about choosing incorrectly? Are you afraid you won't be able to tolerate the consequences of your decision? Let's strengthen your ability to hear and trust your own answer. And so here's where we're at, where I'm at. More self work needed. I am so good at doing this for other people. I could access that little script like it was the air I was breathing in, but to internally speak to myself that way, never. Naturally? Absolutely not. I am a natural compassion giver. I can sit with someone on the worst day of their life. I can help them untangle shame, help them slow down, help them see nuance, help them believe they are worthy. And then I go home, make one tiny mistake, and suddenly I'm like, well, Elizabeth, obviously you're a complete failure and everyone is going to find out eventually. My actual inner monologue when I am struggling is critical, impassionate as fuck, considers only black and white, all or nothing, and in general is an emotional asshole. It's honestly kind of embarrassing how quickly I can access compassion for anyone else, like instantly. It's like breathing. But ask me to talk to myself that way, and suddenly my inner monologue is Gordon Ramsay with a wooden spoon. Side note, I've been super obsessed with Survival of the Thickest lately. Michelle Buteau's character, Mavis, I love her. She's anxious, she's chaotic, she makes mistakes, she overthinks, she always thinks that she has to handle things perfectly, but she keeps showing up for herself in her life in a way that feels authentic. She's not waiting until she's completely healed to deserve love and friendship and career success or joy. She lets you watch the work happening in real time. And obviously, I know this is like a fake character, but with how well she carries it, Michelle, girl, I know some of that is you. And I think that's why the character feels so real to me. There's this moment in the first episode that has been stuck in my head. Mavis finally gets this huge career opportunity, the kind that you're supposed to say yes to like immediately, but it requires working with the man who completely shattered her trust in her life. And everyone watching the show is probably thinking maybe like take the job, like be professional, just like cut yourself off from, but she doesn't take the job. She walks away, not because it was objectively the right choice for everyone, but because it was the right choice for her. That's self-trust. She wasn't asking, what's the smartest career move here? She was asking, can I live with the choice I'm going to make? And those are very different questions. That's one of those boomerang tangents. Back to the point, which is, oh, therapy and what it's for. Right. Okay. I don't think that therapists need to be a blank slate, which means sharing nothing of themselves in the purest sense of that term. I don't think that it's always helpful for a client to know absolutely nothing about their therapist. I do not think answering every question with, and how does that make you feel, is therapeutic brilliance. Sometimes it's just super annoying. People need connection. The therapeutic relationship matters. And that doesn't mean that the therapist becomes like a friend. It does not mean clients need access to their therapist's darkest, deepest experiences. It means there can be moments when it's healing to hear, hey, I struggle too. I don't have the perfect answer. I can see why this hurts. I understand part of this in my own way. You are not uniquely broken. I don't want people believing that therapists are ultimate models of wellness, the gold standard. We struggle. We get support. We go to therapy. We take medication. We repeat patterns. We intellectually understand, ugh, this one twice. We can explain nervous system responses and still lose our shit when someone's tone changes. Knowledge is not immunity. And my only goal in influencing another person, if I'm doing that through my content creation, is to encourage them to be brave enough to become more fully themselves. Not more like me, not more pleasant or agreeable or nice, not easier for everyone else to understand, more themselves. And if I have done my job well, you will not leave thinking more like your therapist. You will leave thinking more like you. If you are not following me on Instagram or TikTok yet, come hang out with me over there. This podcast is where we get to slow down and really unpack these ideas more deeply, but social media is where you'll find little everyday moments. The therapist thoughts, the oldest daughter observations, the stories from my own life, and probably more than a few videos where I start at one point and end up in a completely different zip code. If today's episode made you think, I would love to hear what came up for you. You can find me at Elizabeth May Carr, and as always, I would love to continue the conversation. Okay, so let's wrap up this solo episode with a little bit lighter story and an example of using your voice. This last week, I was moseying through the aisles of Kroger with my partner, David, and we're doing our grocery shopping. Very cutesy, very normative. No joke, I hate planning meals to grocery shop in advance for. It is the bane of my existence. But it is a place, grocery shopping, where I have learned that I am able to let go of control a little bit. Leaning into just wandering through the grocery aisles midday, wondering about like, what sounds good? What do I want to eat today? What are we going to make for dinner? We're going through the seafood aisle, and I really wanted shrimp linguine. My partner, David, does not particularly like shrimp. And I noticed that I was automatically factoring his preference into whether I should buy it for myself. He hadn't noticed the shrimp. He had not asked me not to buy it. He's not allergic to shrimp. There was no shrimp related conflict happening in our household, but my brain simply went, David, no like shrimp. Elizabeth, no buy it. And I suddenly felt so incredibly irritated, not with David or the shrimp, but with myself. Because why was his preference automatically being elevated above mine in a decision that did not require a compromise? Living in a partnership sometimes requires compromise. Let me put that out there first. Being part of a family sometimes means prioritizing the health of one relationship over pure individual preference. I wanted to say that very clearly because apparently the internet is currently blaming therapists for everyone going no contact with their parents. And I want to be clear about what I mean here. I am not saying that every boundary is sacred, everyone else is toxic, and you should burn down your family because somebody scheduled brunch at a restaurant you don't like. Relationships do matter, compromises matter, other people do matter, but compromise says we both matter. Self abandonment says you matter more. If David were allergic to shrimp, it would be inconsiderate of me to cook shrimp in a way that would put him at risk, right? If we're both choosing one shared meal that we will have that week, it might make sense to find something that we both enjoy. But quietly deciding that I don't deserve to buy shrimp because it was an inconvenience to his preferences, that's not a partnership. That's automatically internalizing him over me. Here's what I've been noticing. Those patterns never show up first in big, dramatic, life-changing decisions. They show up in shrimp. They show up in scheduling. They show up in a Saturday afternoon activity agenda list. They're tiny. They're almost invisible, which is exactly why they're so easy to miss. I realized one day that I was standing in a grocery store deciding not to buy a cereal I actually like because no one else in my household eats it. Now, nobody told me not to buy it. David certainly wasn't standing there like, absolutely not, Elizabeth. We are a non Captain Crunch household. This was all happening in my own head. My brain had already decided that my preference was less important than everyone else's. And that's fascinating to me. And honestly, super annoying. Talked about it in therapy for weeks. Because when you start paying attention, you realize how often you quietly remove yourself before anyone ever asks you to, or at least I did. Maybe it's not making time to go for a walk because someone else might need something. Maybe it's asking, where do you guys want to eat? Without ever considering where you want to go. Maybe it's watching a show that you don't really care about because everyone else likes it. Maybe it's saying, I don't care, when you know that you do. These moments don't seem like a big deal, but when they happen every day, they start to stack up. And every time they happen, your nervous system is collecting evidence. Not evidence that you're generous, evidence that your preferences are optional, that your wants can wait, that everyone else's comfort gets considered first. And after years of practicing that, it stops feeling so much like a choice and it starts to feel like who you are. That is why I don't think healing starts with a big, dramatic boundary conversation. It starts with buying the damn cereal or making yourself shrimp linguine or saying, actually, I really like to go here for dinner. Not because it's about cereal or shrimp or food, apparently today is on my mind, but because every tiny choice is another opportunity to remind yourself, I exist in this decision too. Lastly, when I catch myself doing this, I've started asking one question. Am I compromising right now? Or am I removing myself before anyone even asked me to? Because those are two very different questions. Healthy compromise says we both matter. Self abandonment says you matter. I'll figure myself out later. And I've spent enough of my life figuring myself out later. I'm trying to become someone who remembers to include herself in the conversation from the very beginning. Okay, we have been emotionally intense for a while now, so I would like to open a segment I refer to as things I'm embarrassed to admit. Number one, as previously disclosed, I Google everything. Military time, words I absolutely know how to spell, whether a symptom I have is normal, whether the symptom I just Googled could particularly cause cancer, whether anxiety causes the symptom, whether the fact that I am Googling the symptoms means I have anxiety. It's a beautiful circle. Two, I ask people what they think before I decide. Recently, my sister and I were planning my mom's 70th birthday, and I needed everyone's opinion. What food should we have? Where should we go? What activities should we have? What time should it be? What should the vibe be? And I made approximately 10 phone calls before realizing, oh, I already know what I want to do. What I actually wanted was for everyone to feel included and welcomed. But instead of inviting people to the celebration, I accidentally created a planning committee, a board of directors. I would like to motion that we ask three or more people what we think about the barbecue before we get there. Motion denied. Number three, I can tell what someone is thinking by the tone of their voice, or at least I believe that I can. I can tell from the words they choose, the punctuation in their text, the amount of time it takes them to reply, and sometimes, apparently, from the words they subconsciously choose not to use. I am Sherlock Holmes, but only for emotional danger. Number four, I rewrite text messages over and over. Does it sound too firm? Does it get the point across softly? Should I add an LOL? Apparently, that's a big millennial thing. Would an emoji here make the boundary feel less boundary-ish? I have rewritten text messages so many times that the original emotion expired. Five, I have removed TikTok videos because they had low views and it hurt my feelings, low key or high key, whatever kids are saying these days. I know logically that low views can be caused by timing or the algorithm, audience size, the opening hook, random chance that in fact I am still building an account. But emotionally, I'm like, the public has spoken. You don't deserve to be here. Delete. Number six, I have kept my opinion to myself because someone else sounded more confident. And if there is one tiny thing I've learned from the current federal administration, I'm not going to go into that too deeply, it is that confidence does not always equal correctness. Enough said. I used to believe that trusting myself would mean becoming completely independent, never needing reassurance, never asking anyone for their advice, never second guessing, always knowing. I don't think that's trust either. That is another impossible performance, though. Trusting myself does not mean that I never consult other people. It means that I do not delegate my life to them. My therapist is a consultant. My partner, consultant, doctors are consultants, my family, consultants. This podcast can be your consultant, but I am not here to tell you what to do. I am here to sit beside you while you ask yourself a better question because everyone else can offer you information. They can offer perspective. They can love you. They can challenge you. They can remind you of who you are when you temporarily forget what you're capable of. They do not have to live inside of your choice. You do. I know that is terrifying because what if you are wrong? What if you make a mistake? Oh my God, what if someone is disappointed? What if you choose something that you later wish you had chosen differently? And please imagine me holding your hands as I say this to you. You will experience all of those things. At some point, all of those things will happen. You will be wrong. You will make mistakes, some of them big. People will be disappointed. You will change your mind. You will outgrow choices that once felt like they fit like a glove. That is not evidence that you should never have trusted yourself. That is evidence that you are alive, that you are learning, that you're becoming. The goal is not to become a person who always knows the right answer. The goal is to become a person who knows that she can meet herself inside of whatever answer she chooses. Maybe trusting yourself is not about never asking for help. Maybe it's just about remembering that everyone else consults you. And before you ask the entire board of directors what they think, consult yourself first. If I have done my job in this episode, you will not leave thinking more like me. You will leave thinking more like yourself. And maybe the question you can carry on with you this week is, do I actually need someone else's answer, or do I need the courage to listen to my own? I'm Elizabeth. This is Friends with Therapy Benefits, and apparently I can talk by myself for an entire episode. Growth.